All right, so today we're joined by a very special guest and a man who is actually an inspiration for me and my co-host here joining the broadcast media world, Mr. Cecil Lammey of 104.3 The Fan in Denver, Colorado. Cecil, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's great to talk football, and well, I'm a chatty person, so let's get it on.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. I mean, we often hear you talk about how you've been involved with football for most of your life, in terms of fantasy football, at least. When did you first really get involved with football, and how long have you kind of been involved in terms of media as well?
Yeah, this is where I get to the I'm really old portion of the show, which is right at the beginning. I started playing fantasy football in 1993. So, I grew up in the country, middle of nowhere, Grover, Colorado. There was 8 people in my class. There were 30 people in my high school. So, like, small town. I got in an argument with Derek Wolf one time because me and Mitch Unrun were talking about Grover because Mitch is from Eaton, Colorado. And Derek's like, I'm from a small town. I was like, how small? He's like, 12,000. I'm like, that ain't small, man. I'm like, come on. So moved to the city in the year 2000, and I didn't graduate college. I went to be an artist. Didn't graduate. Went to 1 year community college, basically. And so I'm working in a machine shop. I'm working landscaping. Almost lost that finger right there. There's like a huge scar. But anyway, um, so I hear Mark Schlereth on 760 The Zone, and this was 2003. He's talking about fantasy football, and I've been playing for 10 years. And I'd also been calling into the sports show, Irvin Joe. I would call in a Jim Rome, and I would hang out and like buy my machine all day, waiting on hold for 2, 3 hours just to get ran in 20 seconds by Jim Rome. So, I had developed a local caller personality, whatever. And so Stink was talking about fantasy football, and it was awful. And I think he was talking about the backup to Jamal Lewis. And so I wanted to talk about Musa Smith. See, again, I'm really old, but like, so I called in, and Stink kept me on for half an hour because I was like, I played fantasy football since '93. I'm an expert. I played in a professional league and blah, blah, blah. Just got a big mouth. And Stink keeps me on for half an hour during my lunch break, which was only supposed to be 20 minutes. So thought I was going to get in trouble. Right. So I'm all nervous on the phone with Mark Schlereth. So I get back to work, and I hurriedly just like, I'm been here the whole time. What are you talking about? And my best friend, who was a landscaper up in Fort Collins, Big E, he heard the caller behind me, which I did not hear, but the caller behind me said, that guy's pretty good. You should hire him. And so when I'm driving home, Big E calls me, and he's like, that guy behind you, he said you were good. And I was like, I know. And that's just the way I am. And so I went home. I thought about it. I had told my wife at the time, I was like, I'm not gonna interview Peyton Manning tomorrow. So if I ask and they say no, I'm still going to work. If I ask and they say yes, then who knows. So I emailed the producer, who happened to be Andy Lindahl, and Andy got me on with Stink the next Friday for an hour. And then I was on with Mark Schlereth every Friday for an hour that football season. And that was in 2003. So just went from a caller to having a regular fantasy football, taking calls, talking football segment. Did that for 2 years on 760 The Zone. And then did 2 years on KOA with Scott Hastings and Dave Logan on the Sports Zoo. And I remember Dave Logan was like, I don't know about this fantasy football thing. This was 2004, right? I had to fight a lot of this early on because people were like, that's nerdy stuff. I'm like, it's just talking ball. Like, that's all. I remember telling Dave Logan, like, it's just talking football. Like, you don't have to get into that sort of, scoring detail or whatever, but it's just talking ball. So did that, and it essentially worked for free for 4 years. So it was still working at the machine shop and stuff like that. And then in 2007, I'd had a job with footballguys.com from 2005 until today. And then so in 2007, I got my first paid gig with the Fan, 950 the Fan back then AM. And so I quit the machine shop, and I did radio and Football Guys. And today in 2023, I do radio and I do Football Guys. So, been doing football professionally since 2007. Obviously played it as a kid, wanted to be Walter Payton when I grew up, so like I carried the football like sweetness too, like a loaf of bread out here. My coach would always get mad at me, but I never fumbled. in high school. So yeah, that's my. I got a ton of high school glory day stories. I don't want to bore you guys, especially because it was 6-man football. Talk about as unskilled as you possibly can be playing out in a pasture. Watch out for the cow chips. Literally, there would be cow, you know what, on our football field because it was part of the pasture. The cows would just come and graze on it. So yeah, I grew up about as small town as you could be.
I mean, hey, it's Colorado, so we can definitely expect that. I mean, we've been all over the state, so it's definitely does not surprise me to hear a story like that. Said, what do you
Mm.
got for him?
Um, I mean, I'd be interested to hear about some pasture stories, but I
Ha.
guess we could save that for another time. I mean, speaking on 6-man football, I guess that'd be a good transition into the alt league, and I just want to see or get your thoughts with times changing, more social media presence, more people have more ability to get more focus or more eyes on them. And with these alt leagues being able to kind of compete with colleges, I guess, as far as what they can offer players as far as football wise. What are your thoughts on players, looking to go the alt route, whether it be like the USFL, XFL, or indoor league versus going the traditional college route? You think there's a future for players to be able to get drafted from, or more players to be drafted from
Yeah,
alt leagues?
I hope so. And again, into the I'm old segment. That and I you might have to double check my math here because I can't remember exactly what year it was. It was 91 or 93 when Eric Swan was drafted. Eric Swan never played college football, and he was a first round pick for the Cardinals, defensive tackle. He had played like minor league football, like local, like pay your own way type of football. Like we used to have Mile High Grizzlies here. I did some games for them. I didn't realize that they were using the actual, audio from the game to go over and watch film with. So the first game I did, I was like, who is this guy? Who does he think? He's Aaron Rodgers? That throws terrible. So I was just being the color guy, right? I was just like giving my opinion, and the play-by-play guy was setting me up. And I didn't know they would actually listen to this later. And then the coach came to me and he was like, thank you so much. That was so helpful. And I was like, what? I was like being an aloha. I don't know if I can cuss on this, but so like I was being a jerk. But yes, minor league football, it has to thrive. And if you're the NFL, I don't care if it's a loss leader. I was telling you guys before the show, that closet, in addition to be full of comic books, is full of videotapes, DVDs, and hard drives because I have every football game, including preseason, from 1992 until now. Preseason is 2000 until now, but either way, I got a lot of football in there. And in those archives, and it's hard because you have to do it in real time, but every year I try to take more of the tapes and put them onto hard drives so I have less, videotapes. Anyway, so that includes original XFL, it includes World League, UFL. Like if it's been football at a professional level, it's in there and it's in those archives. And the thing for me is talent can come from anywhere. And the NFL for years used to have this inside joke of like, oh, we got a developmental league. It's free. It's called college football. And it would be funny and laughing and all that. And it's like, you don't get the development today because guys don't play. You don't play in the preseason, and if you do play, you're doing vanilla. Everyone's doing vanilla stuff. You need to play real football. And for this talent, and on those tapes, I have like Kurt Warner in the Arena League. I have Kurt Warner in the NFL Europe, right? I have Brad Johnson in the World League. I have Jake Delhomme in, I believe it was early NFL Europe, it might have been World League at the end. But either way, like what you had, and I bring up quarterback specifically, but I could say the same for cornerbacks. I could say the same for wide receivers, and I could definitely say the same for offensive linemen. There's some positions you can show up and just play. Running back, basically. Like running back is, I'm not going to say easy to scout. I don't think anything in scouting is easy, but those skills translate faster than tight ends or offensive line or quarterbacks or cornerbacks. And wide receiver, college football is just a different game now with all the spread concepts, all the stuff that they try in college that won't really work in the pros because it's the discipline. Everyone always talks about the speed. It's the speed of the game. Well, yes, that's true. Everybody's fast in college at the major programs, but it's the discipline of these pros. This is their job. These are grown men. These got bills, like they're not going to just go off of their athleticism, as you see a lot of the times in college football when you could just athlete somebody. These minor leagues need to exist, need to thrive, need to be taken over by the NFL. The NFL needs to have a minor league system. And, so I always applaud the success of any league, whether it's the AAFL or the UFL or the XFL. Like, I encourage all sorts of that because the talent can come from anywhere. And there is talent out there that's untapped. I always think about how many, because the quarterback position has changed over the years, right? How many guys did we miss out on because quarterback was different in the early 2000s? What if, let's say, I don't know, Brad Smith, Brett Meyer, let's go Antoine Randall L. What if he didn't come into the league and wasn't a wide receiver? What if he had gotten a chance to develop as a quarterback, as a passer? Because he's a hell of a passer at Indiana. I know he's 5'10", whatever. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter. If you're a passer, if you can play, you can play. And having developmental leagues, which I think are very important, like that allows you to play and actually develop and not just be like on some fringe out. Because I've seen all the camp bodies. I've been there all the time. I got all the names, usually got their phone numbers. I remember and I'd have to look up his number. This is how long ago it's been. But the Broncos picked up an undrafted quarterback. I remember asking the PR guy for his phone number, and he's like, "Who is that?" And so I explained who it was, and God bless, I can't even remember who it was. It's been that long ago. I was just like, no, I really want to talk to this guy, and he didn't make it at all. But like these guys aren't throwing, they're not passing, they're just sitting around. And so I encourage those fourth string guys, those camp bodies, whatever. Like, yes, get out there, play, put the film out there, and keep your dream of playing in the NFL alive, because that talent can come from anywhere. And the NFL needs this. The NFL has been ignoring this, and they've been missing out on it. They've been missing out on having a true association. And imagine how the teams would be different if your Battlehawks, which are what they open the fourth level, right? Like, oh my God, the Battlehawks have been popular no matter what incarnation they've been. But like, let's say your team sent players to the Battlehawks or the Sea Dragons or whatever. And so now you're a Broncos fan, and then you're like, oh, they sent those guys, maybe Montreal, Washington or something, right? Um, I love Jalen Virgil. Let's say Jalen Virgil, instead of training this offseason and then hoping to get some snaps as a fifth string wide receiver, what if he played in the XFL this spring? You know what? Jalen Virgil will probably dominate. So I love those type of stories, because that's what makes up this league. The first round talent, like the first round, all that stuff is easy. I like the weeds. I like like finding those undrafted gems. That's why CJ Anderson and I became such good friends, because it was early in his training camp, and I have a big mouth. I can talk a lot. And so I'm on the air, ESPN Denver, and I'm blabbing. I got my back to the practice field. And Monte Ball, God bless Monte, he was always good to me. But their running backs are walking by me. I don't know, because I'm in a tent and I just can see the open part of the field. So the running backs are walking by me, and I'm on air. I got a big mouth, and I'm like, the best running back here is CJ Anderson. And he was a rookie. He was undrafted rookie. And Monte Ball was here as their, top pick. And so the next day, CJ comes up. He's like, my mom heard you on ESPN, and thanks for the support. And I was like, yeah, you're good. Like I like watching football. I like talking ball, and I like just being honest. I'll get into this more probably later, but like, I've had so many agents ask me, can you say something nice about my guy? And I'm like, huh? I've had an agent thank me one time at a pro day for liking his guy. And I was like, because I tweeted something about it, and I said, well, he's good. Like, so there's so many agents that feed information. Agents run the news cycle in the NFL. So when you hear something in the pre-draft, like this team, they really like him, like, well, do they? Are you talking to the people that can make the decision? Or are you talking to his agent? So there's a lot of information trading. There's a lot of agent fed information. Unfortunately, there's people that run, and agents know they run with everything. So they just they'll get anything and run with it as an insider. You're not an insider, man. You're a pawn of the agents. So we always have to be careful in the pre-draft process. But to me, it ain't about me. It's glory to the players, glory to the game. And whether that's the NFL, the XFL, the UFL, whatever FL. Like, if you're playing football and you got a dream of playing the NFL, I encourage you to pursue that dream in all means possible.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the recent history of the Broncos, they've had a lot of players that have come out of alt football leagues. We had Josh Johnson last year as a quarterback, played in the XFL. He was actually drafted by the AAF, but I don't think he actually played there. He went to Washington instead.
I
And
think he
then,
played in the UFL as well. Josh and I are
yeah,
friends, and I became friends with Josh at the Shrine game when he came out, and that was down in Houston. I believe it was '08, top of my head, and it was the same class, get this, as Tyler Columbus. Tyler Columbus was at that game in Houston, and Dick Vermeil was their coach. So I remember talking to Josh. We were talking to Dick Vermeil about Josh. So yeah, Josh has been around, but that's the thing. Like, Josh could have been out of football, right? And he's Marshawn Lynch's cousin. So him and Marshawn could have started some business venture or whatever. Like, Josh has a ton of other options, right? Recently married too. Congrats to Josh. He kept playing because his dream is to play in the NFL. And because he kept playing, like, and scouts recognize that and know that, and teams love the fact that he knows a lot of offense. I mean, a lot of offense, and he kept playing. That's the point. Like, don't give up on your dream. And Josh Johnson, what's fifth round pick of Tampa that year, he's kept his dream alive of playing in the NFL.
absolutely. Another guy, former Denver first round pick, Tommy Maddox, was a XFL champion in 2001, NFL
Mhm.
comeback player of the year in 2002. So
Right.
long history of players coming out of alt leagues, especially tied to Denver, ironically.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm kind of curious. Obviously, you're a fantasy football aficionado, so maybe you can answer this. Maybe you can. It's up to you. What's the largest buy-in you've ever done for a fantasy football league?
I didn't play in the larger leagues, but there was the largest prize I've won, I believe, was probably about 12 grand. Now there was years ago when I got into football, guys. This was again 2004. We had a league of the message board. See, because here's why I have to explain message boards to everybody. Like, in the old days, there was these things called chat rooms. But anyway, so it was the football guys message board versus the staff. And I wasn't on staff, but I wanted to be part of football guys because I knew they paid their staff well, and it was just a cool community. So I told them, I was like, you guys are going to pick me because I was big in the message board. I had message board cred. It's like Twitter cred, right? It doesn't mean anything. But anyway, so I said, you guys are gonna pick me to play against you. I'm gonna beat everybody. I'm gonna win the whole thing, and then you're gonna hire me. And I won the whole thing, and then they hired me. So that's kind of that was my biggest contest win, if you will.
Nice. That's amazing, man. I think most I've won is I won like $200 a couple years ago. It'd be awesome to win like anything over like 1,000 would be
Well, and I love
phenomenal.
fantasy football because it can be as simple or as complicated as you want. The league that I had since 1993, we have practice squads, we have franchise players, we have, tags, we have obviously trades. So it's like a hybrid dynasty because dynasty is getting larger for fantasy football, whereas you just keep everybody. We do like a hybrid contract auction league because we're super nerdy. But if you do a redraft traditional, this is it, awesome. If you do PPR, great. If you do super flex leagues, which I know have caught like wildfire in the fantasy football community, awesome. Best ball leagues, whatever. Like, fantasy can be customized to the level of fans, the level of players you have in your league.
Do you think um having players on your team that are fantasy relevant players, do you think that usually translates into having strong playoff teams?
Yes, yeah, and that's a thing where, like, again, I don't fight this as much anymore because people know fantasy football and like love it, and it's become where it used to be a nerd if you played fantasy football. Now you're a nerd if you don't play fantasy football, and I'm like, well, aren't we all nerds? Be nerds about something. But anyway, so I believe that there's a ton of fantasy people that can be very good when it comes to like playoff fantasy or playoff betting because these players and you've studied these players or you've studied the backup players. You know what I mean? So by the time the playoffs get here, when you see, let's say, for example, a Skylar Thompson that was thrust into the starting lineup for Miami, like, yeah, you've already seen him play because with fantasy, you're paying attention to everybody all the time. You're not just focused on the Broncos, you're focused on everybody. And I love that about fantasy football. So I think that not only teams can have that, but fantasy players can have that success in kind of, because fantasy, like whatever the money is, it's mainly about proving that you know more about football than your friends. So that's the fun thing about fantasy. And I think the great thing about the fantasy community, and this is why I would never poo poo anyone from the fantasy community, is because you're going to be paying attention to those guys, you know. And one thing, when I got into this business of radio, and I was just like asking people, and there'd be big name people I'd talk to, and I'd be like, wow, you don't know anything. I wouldn't say this, of course, but it was like, so when you run into the Mark Schlers who know everything, you know, when you run into those people that aren't just lazy because they have a big name or whatever, like the people that study the game, that's when you appreciate it. Because all of us fantasy players, especially the hardcore ones, we're all studying the game, you know. So that's why I remember when people didn't know what targets were. Again, I'm old, so this is the Cecil Lammey is old show. But like, I remember when I introduced targets to Dave Logan, and you know, he's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "It's how many times you got thrown at." You know that number? I'm like, yeah, like that's just what you did. So that's, you know, air yards per attempt has become big now, even though Brandon Stokely hates when I bring that up. Like, yeah, there's all sorts of things now. Personnel, 11 personnel. I remember I asked Peyton Manning about 12 personnel one time when people that wasn't as part of much of the lingo, and Peyton tried to quiz me. He's like, "What's 12 personnel?" I was like, "That's one running back, two tight ends." And he goes, "We call it Dallas." I was like, okay, well, tell me about Dallas. And so anyway, so like now 12 personnel, 11 personnel, you know, people just say that now. It's part of the lexicon. That comes from fantasy football. That comes from everyone being obsessed with this game. And I think the way the NFL has embraced it has caused the popularity of the sport to grow even more. It's always been big because of gambling, but I think fantasy football has made it even larger. The way they embrace the casual fan, I think, is fantastic. That's one of my biggest problems with hockey fans. Hockey fans, if you mispronounce some Russian's name, it doesn't mean you don't know the sport. You just might be a little more casual. Football fans, they're like, yeah, casual fans, hardcore fans. They make casual fans and hardcore fans, usually because of fantasy football. So, yes, I always encourage that because you're paying attention to everything if you're playing in fantasy football.
100%. I remember my first time playing fantasy football and I got completely blown out. And I was like, next year, this is not going to happen. I was literally watching the draft, taking notes on guys I thought were going to be good. And from there on, it's been an obsession. And that was when I was like 12 or 13 years old. And that was, shoot, 20 years, 21 years ago now. So, yeah, definitely crazy to think about the fact that fantasy football is the reason we're here, quite honestly.
Hmm.
So speaking of that, and speaking of some of the smaller school prospects, I wanted to get your assessment on a quarterback who is currently in the XFL, who is NFL draft eligible. His name's Harrison Frost. Are you familiar with Harrison
It's the
Frost?
West Georgia kid. Yeah. West Georgia,
What do you
right?
think
Yeah.
about him? Yes.
Yeah, a little toesy when he throws. But if you calm him down, like he's definitely got the eyes, he sees the field well, he leads his receivers. And I'm going mostly off the West Georgia stuff because, again, since I'm in draft mode or pre-draft mode, I'll be this way until April, where basically I'm underwater and I'm watching prospects or I'm going to pro days. The local pro days aren't as exciting. Last year we had like Trey McBride. You know, you've been to Logan Wilson's pro day, all those sorts of things. Anyway, I will have the stuff recorded and I'll watch his XFL stuff later. But just on West Georgia stuff, you see anticipation, you see full field reads, which I appreciate, and you see good pass placement. It's more than accuracy. Accuracy numbers can be skewed, especially in college football. You're throwing a bunch of dump offs. You're going to be, he's like 70% passer, you know. And then I remember the Matthew Stafford when he was at Georgia and he was less than 60% passer. And people are like, what do you do with that? I'm like, he's a great Josh Allen, same thing, right? And although it was at Wyoming, not Georgia, but I was like, he's less than 60% passer. I'm like, look at he's throwing to. All apologies to Tanner Gentry and Brian Hill, but like, no. So just based off of West Georgia film, I'd like his footwork to be a little bit better because he does get a little toesy. But he doesn't wilt under pressure, and like I said, he seems pretty calm, making full field reads and throwing with anticipation. because as Scott McLuhan told me years ago about quarterbacks specifically, physical stuff's easy to see. So when everyone's going gaga over Anthony Richardson, one, I go, yeah, that's easy. Two, I go, what took you so long? And three, I go, Gator Chomp. And then I go, that doesn't mean anything because it was a big arm. Like, there's a million guys with a big arm. And I like Anthony Richardson, but, when agents are feeding information, he could be number one overall. No, he's not. That's probably going to be CJ Stroud now that the Panthers have the pick. But anyway, so the physical stuff, I want the mental side. I want the anticipation. I want the processor. So many quarterbacks that I've gone through over the years. And I remember Drew Lock's dad, Andy Lock, very good man. And Drew's a good man. I remember Andy coming up to me after practice one day and Drew's rookie year. And he's like, I heard you talking, what's up with his footwork? And I was like, I talk to Drew about his feet all the time. Like his footwork is off. And that's his processor, right? They weren't putting his feet in the right spot of the play during the breakdown and as the receivers are spreading out. So Drew's feet were always late, which means he was always late, but he had the gun so he could fire it in there. Well, it doesn't matter if you're late. You're just making things harder on yourself. You're not Brett Favre, so footwork, very important to me. Anticipation, very important to me. All of these skills that are, beyond just he's got the big arm, whatever, or accuracy. I want to see pass placement. How do you lead your receivers? Are you on rhythm? Are you on time? Are you throwing late? Do they have to turn? All these sorts of things. So it's impressive when I see a small school, especially West Georgia. I haven't seen a whole lot of West Georgia guys. But as someone that can throw with touch and anticipation, that shows you got to give him a shot.
Yeah, man. So keeping it on fantasy football for a little bit longer. Going over to the Broncos as a Broncos fan, and I try to touch on them on my show, said talks. Do you think they have any fantasy relevant players on their team right now?
The problem is we're here in Denver, so people will scoop up their Broncos early on. But I think the Broncos could be the key to your fantasy championship with Sean Payton. Now we're gonna have to see how everything shakes out, and I know we're gonna talk about Cortland Sutton in a little bit, but Russell Wilson on a comeback player of the year thing, yes. Now in national leagues, if you play with guys online, Yahoo or whatever, get Russell Wilson late. I don't know what his current ADP is. It doesn't matter right now, but you're going to be able to get Russell Wilson really late, and he's probably going to be able to pay off his average draft position. As I've often said, our first round picks in fantasy always equal each other out. You got to watch out the running backs because there's 50% turnover every year in the top 10. But yeah, you got a first round pick. I got a first round pick. It's always the late guys. What's It's Tim Patrick, Michael Thomas. How does Albert Okwuegbunam or Greg Dulcich? Greg's got to get in better shape though. He can't do all these hamstring things. When they cleaned out their lockers, I was standing around and someone with long hair went past me, and I was like, "Who's that reporter?" It wasn't a reporter; it was Greg Dulcich, and I was like, "Oh my god!" From a body standpoint, yeah, you got some meat on them bones, man. You gotta bulk up, or else you're gonna have those hamstring problems. But are those guys like Jimmy Graham? Is Russell Wilson like Drew Brees? I don't think Javante is probably ever going to be the same again. But do they draft someone, a Tyjae Spears, something like that? Yeah, I think the Broncos would be very fantasy relevant. We'll see. Do they keep Jerry Jeudy at backside X? I hope they do, because obviously that worked. Obviously, when you made him the primary read, which it's Jerry. That's just whatever. Oh, he's got to be the number one read. Yeah, it worked. I don't care. Because Jerry will kind of fall asleep a little bit if he knows he's not the first read. If he knows he's the first read, he's going to work his ass off and get open because he can get open against anybody. So I think depending on how things shake out, running back, what receivers they keep, if they trade any, the Broncos offense can be a key to your fantasy league. Unfortunately, in Denver, you're going to have to fight all the Broncos fans who just take their Broncos anyway.
That's completely fair. I'm a little discouraged by what you just said about Javante. I really think he was going to be a great back. So hopefully he can get back up to speed where he was headed. And then same as your feelings on Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton's a number 2. Why was he the first read at any point? That was kind of odd to see. But yeah, Jerry Judy's on the up and up. It would be extremely exciting to see him in Sean Payton's offense this year.
Hmm.
But I'm kind of curious. Do you think that Denver brings back Latavius Murray for that backfield?
They could. The nice thing about Latavius, he'll be in there in June. Like, and I don't mean to be cruel. And I saw Latavius is one of the final players remaining from the final Texas First the Nation game. That one was in Dallas, some suburb of Dallas, I can't remember, at a high school stadium that cost $30 million to build. It's Texas, baby. They take their high school football seriously. So I love Latavius because he's one of the last players from that game. Ryan Griffin, the quarterback, was also at that game. So yeah, Latavius, I thought they might rework Chase Edmonds' deal instead of just cut him. And Chase Edmonds will be out there. You know what I mean? Running back is such a young man's game, and I feel bad for him. I can't remember who I was talking to yesterday, but we were talking about Austin Eckler. And Austin Eckler is from Eaton, Colorado, right? Love him. And my best friend, Biggie, my best friend, his little sister, Amy, shout out Miss Hogsett, was Austin Eckler's middle school teacher. It's Eaton, a small town. He went to Gunnison, Western State. My son's worked out with him when he was at Gunnison at Western State. But anyway, so like you think about those Colorado backs, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, and Philip Lindsay playing high school football at the same time right here in the state of Colorado. I could easily make the argument Eckler was the best one because love Christian. He's not healthy as much as he needs to be. Austin Eckler is amazing, absolute amazing talent. And Philip Lindsay's done. Like as bad as I feel about for Phil, like his playing days are pretty much over. He'll bounce around a little bit, play for a couple more years, whatever. And I wish him all the success in the world. But like, look how fast that changed. Philip Lindsay went from everybody's got his jersey to, you know, almost out of the league. McCaffrey's still a force, and Eckler's just amazing. Best running back in football, one of the best, top five, whatever you want to say. Like, so yeah, some good football and some good players here we've seen locally.
This is my personal take from the Broncos. So it just kind of feels like since they traded for John Elway, um, they just can't seem to draft and develop a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
They had Jay Cutler and Kyle Orton back in the day, but every other one, the big ones, it's like they've been chasing the last best thing as opposed to wanting to develop the next best thing or take the time to do that. And they go through with all these other positions and they're able, even now, most recently, they took Pat Surtain in the first round, and you and everyone says, obviously that was an obvious pick to take. But they did take that chance, though. They didn't go off and try to draft some or sign some cornerback that was good 5 years ago. But why does it feel? It feels like at quarterback that's what they're constantly doing. And I don't know. I guess I wanted to get kind of your thoughts towards that.
Yeah, I've thought about this some, but I've never elaborated it in this way. So let's unpack this thing. Could it have been the Shanahan offense? Because I'm thinking about Kyle and I'm remembering Mike and how great that offense was. You brought up Jay Cutler. I remember arguing with Mike Evans on the radio, like, because he was a plumber guy and I was a Cutler guy and I should have been a plumber guy. Now Jake and I are friends. I love Jake Plummer and he was so underrated as a Broncos quarterback. But like that system needs you to run that system. So the problem with Jay Cutler is like he's wild. He was a wild horse, right? He's a wild card, whatever you want to say. Like he wouldn't run the system. Jay Cutler was a problem. Robert Griffin III, when he ran the system, he was pretty good. And then he went to Mike Shanahan's like, I don't want to run these plays anymore. Then that's when the problem started. Why can someone like Brock Purdy come in and look okay? Why can Kirk Cousins continue to get paid? It's the system. So from the Elway days, and Elway had to fight Dan Reeves early on, God rest his soul, and then got Mike Shanahan. The examination we need to look at is like the Broncos haven't developed a quarterback, but they've had a system, and this is from Kyle basically, but we've seen it with Mike. That system makes the quarterback the least important part in an offense, which is weird. In a quarterback desperate league, not a quarterback driven league, in this quarterback desperate league where everyone's trying to find that quarterback, the Shanahan offense actually makes that piece the least important part, Like, he's a part, and you've got to run it. You have to run that system true to design, offensive line wise, the flow, running back wise, the patience, receiver wise, the blocking, tight end with the blocking, of course, George Kittle. But like, and I remember talking to Brock Purdy at the Shrine Bowl last year, and we had a players' lounge, get to hang out with him, and he was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to play football again. And the dude was like the darling of the NFL season. It's like, why? That system, the dirty secret is fit in the NFL. It's all about fit. So, name a player. He didn't work out. What a bust. Okay. Well, how was his fit? If his fit's not good, he's not going to play well. If his fit's good, you're going to play real well. Why hasn't Denver developed a quarterback? One, after Shanahan, they had no idea who they were, right? And Josh McDaniels, they did it with Foxy. God bless John Fox. I remember 2 of his sons worked for Marvel, and he didn't know what Ant-Man was. This is before the Ant-Man movie came out, the first one. And so he's like, what the hell's Ant-Man? Because Fox had always come over to talk to us media types, and he'd just tell Dick Cheney jokes and stuff like that. He'd joke around. He wouldn't do anything serious during practice. And I remember talking to him because he was like, you're a comic book nerd. Who's an Ant-Man? What the hell is that? I was like, let me explain. And then his like eyes glossed over and he totally lost interest. But when I was talking about the Pym particle or whatever, but like, I don't know. So Foxy, whatever, that was different. And certainly Peyton era different. But like knowing who you are, they will do that under Sean Payton. And Sean Payton helped develop a Tony Romo when he was on Dallas's staff. And I remember writing about it at Football Guys in my Dark Phoenix column during the summer, during the preseason. Again, I got every preseason game on tape from the year 2000. I remember writing about Tony Romo when he was undrafted out of Eastern Illinois. And I was like, watch out for this kid. And he became something largely due to Sean Payton, who was also Marshall Faulk's running back coach at San Diego State. But anyway, so yes, now they're going to know who they are with Sean Payton. Now they have an actual quarterback developer. And now they're not running the Shanahan system, which makes you just run that system. That system is great. That system is proven. That system is championship level. But God bless Kyle Shanahan. If you ever got a real quarterback, like you watch out, watch out. Because Brock, there's a ceiling with Brock and there's a ceiling with Jimmy. Trey Lance has uncapped potential. He just doesn't run the system real well yet. So it's like, okay, but that system, I think, probably has held back the development of quarterbacks more than people locally want to realize.
Man, talk about a great breakdown of that whole situation, because honestly, I don't think I've really thought about it quite that in depth, but you great points there for sure. Interesting to kind of hear how you've seen it from your perspective as kind of a Denver insider. I mean, you've seen a lot that the rest of us haven't. Um, but looking forward at the 2023 NFL draft, obviously you said you're in draft mode. Obviously, as we spoke about quite a bit, we're huge on alt football here. So I'm curious, who are some late round UDFA type guys that we should look for that could potentially be in the XFL, USFL in the next couple seasons?
Yeah, and I love over the years and the All-Star road trip that I take every year, 17 years in a row of going to the Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, Texas versus the Nation when they had it, NFLPA game when they had it. They do now, it's different, but it's the same week of the Shrine game. I'm not going to miss the Shrine game. Anyway, I love the K Johnsons, right? I love the Frank Darbys. So it's no surprise that I begin with a wide receiver, Demario Douglas, who I saw at the Shrine Bowl this year. He's from Liberty. I started calling him 7-Eleven because he was always open. And again, when you're looking at small school prospects, like talent can come from anywhere. I always bring up the Montreal, Washington pick as a bad pick because they should have drafted Isaiah Pacheco. And it's nothing against Montreal. Montreal's a really nice guy, but I like Jalen Virgil a hell of a lot more. If you wanted a small school return guy, Jalen Virgil was your guy because he actually can play receiver. Montreal, Washington can't play in this league. And it's like people like, oh, you just hate the small school. Like, no, I don't. Small school players are some of my favorite players in the league. But when you see it, like a Demario Douglas from Liberty, he's got nuance that you see at big schools from like a Jerry Jeudy. He's got route nuance, which you don't see at small schools or even some large schools. I remember in the interview still on YouTube when I interviewed Mike Wallace at the Senior Bowl, and he was like, I don't even know what I'm doing out here, man. Because at Ole Miss, they didn't teach him anything. You're just like, hey, you're super fast. You can catch, go play receiver. But when you take that nuance, Mike Wallace played for a long time in this league, and he wasn't just a speed guy. but like you show that route, kind of extra knowledge, a higher knowledge of route running. That's what I saw from Demario Douglas, one of my favorites at the Shrine Bowl this year, and had to write him up in my practice reports because he can get open, and he's always open, and he can catch real well. And if that's the way you are, coming out of small school, you're going to have that transition. We talked about Adam Thielen earlier, right? What made Thielen special for years and years? He could get open. Demario Douglas is that guy there as well. Looking further down, I think this is a good year for tight end. It's a great year for tight end. So from the Shrine Bowl is where most of my late round guys will be. I liked what I saw from a Joel Wilson, the Central Michigan kid, Daniel Barker, Michigan State. These are more late round players. Blake Whiteheart from Wake Forest was good there as well, because tight end, you've got to learn two positions at once. So when I see these young men out there working on their blocking, in addition to being receiving threats, and I thought that Blake Whiteheart, the Wake Forest kid, was really good in terms of using his body, blocking out smaller defenders, those type of things. That's what you're looking for basically. And just from doing this for 20 years and, being a media scout and consulting for some teams along the way, never consulted for the Broncos. Not that I'm bitter about that, but like at this point, I just kind of know what to look for. I know how much to look for. Because there were days, especially early on, and I've never claimed to be the smartest guy in the room, but I remember being at my first Shrine game, fell in love with some Hampton receiver or something, and a kid couldn't play, but I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm sitting there, and I'm making fun of Matt Millen, who was the Lions GM at the time. I'm like, I'm Matt Millen, I'm an idiot. He was standing like 3 people away from me. And I didn't know that because I had never been to a Shrine game, and I didn't know, like, you just be around those people. Those people are going to be around you. But I have a big mouth and I'm dumb. So I was like, Matt Millen, I'm going to take another wide receiver for the Lions. And he's like right there. He gave me the death stare of all death stares. So, like, not only have I learned to keep my mouth shut, and usually I go hide now during practice. Like, I just want to watch practice. I don't want meet me at the barbecue spot. We'll talk then. And I don't want to sound like a snob, but like I'm there to watch practice, and it drives me up a wall, especially at the Senior Bowl, which has been real touristy. When people go there, not my brand, like, man, F your brand. You got to put in the work. This is about the work. And I'll see people at practice, they don't have notebooks. They're not taking notes. I'm like, why are you here? Like, go. We don't need you here. Like the Vegas, you don't get that. The Shrine Bowl is more hardcore, but that's why I always look at the Shrine Bowl players over the years, and kind of admire those type of players. Jack Coletto, I've brought him up a million times. He's You want to call use check, you go get Jack Coletto. And people are going to talk about Luke Musgrave, which they should. I believe Luke Musgrave should be a first round pick. Don't know if he will be. There might be as many as 4 tight ends in the first round this year. But Jack Coletto, the backup to Luke Musgrave, the Wildcat quarterback, the fullback / tight end, he's Kyle's use check. I saw him at the Shrine Bowl. He was fantastic. So, yeah, man, as I said, I'm chatty. We could go for a while, but those are just some of the, small school late round prospects that I want to keep an eye on. Jack Coletto specifically, Demario Douglas specifically.
Nice, man. Yeah, I could only hope to get to the level you're at and have as much film or game tape stored away to be able to go back and reference back to. I'm nowhere near it. I know Sam, he's more so that guy. I know in our smaller leagues we have coaches and teams reaching out to him for information because he's just on it. It's just amazing to be able to see you reference the players like that. And I don't know why the Broncos haven't reached out to you yet, especially right here being in the hometown. They should be listening to you guys.
Ha.
I try to listen every day. Besides the O line, and with the Broncos not having early round draft picks, are there any players in the draft that you hope that they target or
Yeah.
go after?
Keanu Benton and Dante Stills. Those should be the two. Benton, Wisconsin, Stills, West Virginia. Again, Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl this year. So when you have interior defensive linemen getting pressure, and Stills specifically, although Benton can kind of do it all. Dante Stills is seen more as a tweener. That's why he might fall to, let's say, the 5th round. But he's a he's a beast. He's a maniac in there, and I love seeing it, like Tasmanian Devil. And interior pressure is killer. Exterior pressure of snap to sack is 2.5 seconds. Well, snap to pass is 2.5 seconds. So edge is, there's ways to get around edge pressure. Middle pressure makes everybody look mortal. So when you have a Keanu Benton, when you have a Dante Stills, the guys that can get you interior pressure while being sound against the run, Benton being more sound against the run than Stills, but interior defensive linemen that can come in, rotate in, stay fresh, attack the middle. Once you get pressure in a quarterback's face, he's now you're leveling the playing field by that middle pressure, and then have exterior pressure, because exterior pressure, you just step up, you just climb the ladder, and then, oh, they didn't get to him. But if you have exterior pressure, and the Broncos are going to have pressure problems, so fix those pressure problems by having players that can get you middle pressure, then pinch it with the edge, whether that's corner blitz as well. Vance Joseph's got his work cut out for him. He's going to have to be very creative this year to get extra pressure. The Broncos rushers aren't as good as I think they need to be. Randy Gregory's never healthy, and we don't know if Baron Brownie's just like Malik Reed, or is he Shaq Barrett. We haven't seen yet with Baron Brownie. One of my favorites a few years ago, but okay, we need to see that next step, because we saw like a limit. We saw a Malik Reed limit to him last year. We don't need him to be Malik Reed. You need him to be Shaq Barrett. We'll see if he can do that this season.
Love Shaq Barrett. Gotta love those Colorado prospects when they occasionally pop on film, because unfortunately it's few and far between, it seems like.
Well, and the thing about Shaq Barrett, and not to proselytize too much, but he was a bad body prospect. That's why he fell undrafted, because people underwear Olympics, pro days. Why is that important? It's important to scouts to show that you're putting in the work. And Shaq was never lazy. Shaq was never not putting in the work. But because scouts saw him as a bad body prospect, he's a little tubby, right? He's a little soft, a little round, a little doughy, because of that, he fell undrafted and became one of the greatest in the league. That's why talent can come from anywhere. So you have to look beyond the bad body prospect. And when you can play, and Shaq at CSU, I called him a forced fumble specialist. It was just his thing. The New Mexico Bowl, his final game for the Rams, I think he had at least 2 forced fumbles, if not 2 recoveries. And I might want to say it was 4 forced fumbles and 2 recoveries. But either way, that's all he did in college. And he has a knack for it. So watching that, and again, local prospects, I've seen the local Andrew Wingard, who's a free agent this year. Broncos should consider him as a reserve safety special teams guy. Andrew Wingard from Wyoming went to Ralston Valley. He was at the local pro day. And I remember, I won't say who this person was, but I remember walking into that pro day, and a major reporter with a major outlet turned to me and said, "We're going to see a bunch of effing nobodies today." And I was like, that's just because you don't know. You don't know. Andrew Wingard was in that building. I believe Phil was there. I'm getting my dates wrong, but there was a few players that could play. I've seen Eddie Yarborough. I'm bringing up a bunch of Wyoming guys, but at the local pro day that every team has, you can find that prospect. That's where Adam Thielen came from, because he was at a local pro day because he played around Minnesota, and they brought him in, and the dude became a star. Wingard's a real strong safety. So you got to watch for that talent everywhere. Talent can come from anywhere, and you keep watching it. You keep going, and the finding the gems. So I don't give credit to George Payton for Pat Surtain. Pat Surtain was a superstar. Everybody knew it. That's not the hit. Had he drafted Tariq Woolen last year, which I was screaming, even after the Damari Mathis pick, I was screaming get Tariq Woolen. He's 6'4", he runs a 4.2. And he took the Laren Turner yell. If George Payton gets Tariq Woolen and he's got Pat Surtain and Tariq Woolen, you're never throwing against the Broncos. And also Damari Mathis and K'Wan Williams. K'Wan's a great player. But yes, it's unearthing the gems. That's the most fun part of what I do, because the draft season is my favorite time of year.
Absolutely. That's really what got me into football as well, kind of analyzing the draft picks and coming into who was going to hit, who was going to be a bust, etc. But I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. I see your smoking gun cap there. So I wanted to talk about Smoking Gun Comics and how we can support the launch of the next project.
Oh, yeah. I just appreciate everyone out there. Go to Kickstarter, Sue Immortal's on there right now. There you go. That's our latest comic that's on Kickstarter. And you can support the company. I've been a comic book nerd my entire life. As long as I've loved football, I love comic books. And I thought I would be a comic book artist growing up. Never, I didn't push myself the way I should have as a younger man. Like I would never stop today. I told you the story how I got into radio. Like I wish I would have done that for comic books back in the day, but now with crowdfunding, able to do that. Found some really great artists to work with. So Kickstarter, smokinguncomics.com is where everyone can go. And these are the ideas that I've had in my head for 20, 30 years, some of them. But we have 8 intellectual properties that are getting launched this year via crowdfunding, and we're attacking the comic book community, and also have contacts in Hollywood because I'd like to see some of this stuff get made into TVs or movies or streaming shows or whatever. So, that's how it starts. And as I said, when I talked about like, I'm not interviewing Peyton Manning tomorrow, why don't I just ask? Well, I am essentially asking the universe, like, hey, I'm going to make comics and put it out there and see what people respond to. And, you never know what happens, but you won't know unless you do it. So my advice to everyone is like, what do you want to do? Huh? Go do it. How many times do I talk to people? Hey, I want to do what you do. And I say, start a podcast. And then I'll see them a year later. Did you start your podcast? No. I'm like, well, then you're not going to do it. Like, go do it. StreamYard's got real good service. Like, yes, EV Mux, whatever service you use, like, you want to do this, go do it. There's nothing stopping you. Only you're stopping you. And that's the key in life. All of us, the only thing stopping us is ourselves and the limit in our imaginations. Like, no, imagine it all, dream it all. And you'll see along the way, Mark Schlereth, Scott Hastings, Adam Schefter, those 3 men did so much for me along the way, climbing the ladder or whatever. And I remember asking Mark one time, like, Stink, why did you help me? And he goes, because you didn't ask for anything. I just want to talk ball, so I would be around Mark Schlereth and I was never asking him like, get me a job. Can you get me a job? How about this job? What about Fox Sports? Like, whatever. Like, I was just there to talk football. Like, I just want to talk football. And so because of that, he was very generous in opening doors for me. Scott Hastings got me my job on The Fan years ago. Adam Schefter was my mentor, and I remember teaching Adam about fantasy football. Now Adam's like a huge fantasy nerd. And I remember explaining to him, because we're talking about Robert Smith and Leroy Horde, and I was like, Leroy Horde's the guy to have. He's like, but Robert Smith, I was like, Leroy Horde scores the touchdowns. It's all about touchdowns. So like I taught Adam Schefter fantasy football, and in turn he taught me a lot about the media. And be kind, be respectful, ask, and you'll be surprised what you get.
I mean, the evidence is right here below us with Cecil joining us, because quite honestly, all I did was reach out and ask. I mean, as I talked about in the intro, you've been a long-standing inspiration to me, even though I've never really told you that until getting you on here to interview. And quite honestly, I mean, this is us doing exactly that, kind of putting it out in the world. We wanted to talk about sports. Here we are doing it. So
Yeah, there's
I
nothing
appreciate
stopping
that
you. And
sentiment.
and the thing I always tell people is like, you gotta get your chops in, man. You get your chops in. And the only way you get your chops in is reps. My first show on the Audible, because I've been podcasting since 2005, since before they were called podcasts. My very first show on the Audible, I said, welcome back to the very first show. Nothing had existed before. And I said, welcome back. Anyway, so like I have that first show still on my computer. So if I want to like laugh or just kind of have a moment of humility, I guess, I'll just go listen to that first show and be like, man, I was awful. People would say I'm still awful today. But like back then, I was so rough and raw and didn't know the timing, the pacing, all those sorts of things. How did I learn it? You just did it. You just do, what's Peyton Manning say? 10,000 hours? Like, you just do it. That's how you learn. That's how you get better, right? I'm not going to be a comic book artist if I just show up and be like, I'm here. No, you got to draw. You got to do it. I got to write the stories. Like, I got to talk. I got to watch the football. And again, it's back to the glory to the game. It's watching these guys that'll do anything, watching these guys that'll play in the UFL just to keep playing. My buddy Cody Latimer, I'm friends with Cody. I'm so happy that Cody's still playing. Cody could play especially special teams. There's so underrated as a gunner. Peyton broke him though. Peyton broke him. Like he was not a fit with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's very, very demanding of you. And Cody, despite his physical skill set, couldn't mesh with Peyton. But Cody Latimer could play football. He was a tattoo artist, after his football days were done in the NFL. But like, yeah, I love that. I love seeing that because again, it's just like we're all doing. Just keep grinding, keep chasing, don't ever give up because you never know what's going to happen, but it only won't happen. I live life by the generative principle: thoughts, emotions, actions. And there's three things in life: thoughts, emotions, actions. You have to think about everything that happens is first a thought. So you have to first think of it. You have to think positively. This is what I'm going. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. Then you have to actually do it, and you don't do it with and I have to be the biggest star ever after one show. Like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm going to keep grinding. I'm gonna keep going. No one's gonna stop me. I'm gonna get better. I'm going to use resources. I'm going to learn this craft or this trade or what have you. And it doesn't have anything to do with podcasting or sports or whatever. It's anything in life. Anything in life, you have to do it. The generative principle says you must thoughts, emotions, actions, but the action is the most important thing, because people always say what you think about, you bring about. I've talked to Von Miller about this, like positive thinking, and I definitely believe in the power of positive thinking. What you think about, you bring about, but you can't just think it. You got to do it. So, like me with the comic books, I thought about that since the 90s. Well, how about I stop thinking and how about I actually do? You want to do a podcast, stop thinking about it, do it, and then as you do it, you'll get better and better and better. And then you'll have something to present to whoever it is, radio station, podcast network, or what have you, and say, hey, here's what I've done. Here's how we've grown. And you'll be better. You'll be sharper. And that's the way things happen. But so many people want instant gratification that if they not immediately, I don't immediately get 20,000 likes or whatever, or 20,000 views or whatever, like, then this isn't for you. If you're looking for that immediate result, it's about that grind, and that grind will tell who's going to be there in the long haul.
Yeah, man, that's that's pretty amazing. You're definitely right about that. I feel like I'm learning that right now in all aspects of my life. And like Sam said, that was the case with this. I mean, I went to the Colorado Media School, but I didn't really learn, anything as far as like how to run a podcast or set it up or what to go about and this and that. And I still don't know anything, like I still don't know much of anything. I just kind of go into it with the enthusiasm that I'm gonna learn something, and I think I personally just definitely learned a lot from just speaking with you today. And it's, man, I can't even tell you how long I've been in Denver since 2010, and I think I've been listening to the fans since 2011, and kind of just nowadays am listening to you guys every day. I especially to drive, and then I followed up with you. Whenever you're on there, you and Big O. So just to speak with you and just to hear your knowledge, man, like man, you don't even know how many times I've just tuned into your fantasy football show just to like catch some information, try to get a leg up, a head above. But you're right though, it's just doing it, just personally being a part of Shady Sports Network. I've seen us, we're still growing and still have a long ways to go, but from where it started, where we started at, man, just this chat with you is just a testament to that. So, before we end, I do want to say thank you for being on, bro.
I appreciate you guys for having me.
Sed, did you have any more questions?
No, I think that pretty. I mean, I could, I could definitely sit here and ask you about the Broncos all day, every day. But I don't want to hold you up. We could save that for another time.
Yeah, it's the next show, right?
There we go. There we go.
That would be great. I do have one final question for you. I mean, obviously, you talked about the fact that you're in this for the grind. You continue to kind of progress through your career. So I'm kind of curious. I mean, what's your ultimate goal? I mean, are you already
Mm.
living your dream that you're on the radio talking fantasy football all day, or is there a higher goal that you want to achieve someday?
Yeah, I know that people are like, you should be on ESPN. I'm like, yeah, okay, I appreciate that sentiment. People like, you should be on NFL Network. I appreciate that sentiment as well. And not that those conversations haven't happened in years past, but it's like, what is right for you along the way? What gives you everything that you want in life? And for me, working for the Fan is a dream come true. I love John Regal when the Fan first started years ago. He knew guys back to high school. And when I was hired by the Fan, I remember my program director at the time, Tim Spence, introduced me to Sandy Clough and Mike Evans. He said, "This is the new John Regal." John Regal had passed. He did a show with Adam Schefter on Saturdays, like on 950 The Fan years ago when Adam worked for the Rocky Mountain News. That tells you how long ago it was. So I never got to meet John before he passed. But he knew so much about football, just top of his head, back to high school. He was one of those Joel Bucksbaum. We've had a few of these like football savants. John Regal was that. So like for me, like being at Denver Sports, being at the Fan, that's a dream come true. If other offers or opportunities arise, I'm always listening to those offers and opportunities. Obviously, I'm very happy with what I've done for Football Guys. I've worked for them since 2005, and I've been full-time football since 2007. So, super happy there. Always listening, making comic books. I know I've had people be like, "Are you going to leave football?" I'm like, "I can't leave football. I love it too much." But yes, I want my comic books to take off and, write movies or whatever. Like, yeah, I want to do all that. Why not? You can have it all. You can do it all. So yeah, I would love to do that. But certainly feel blessed to, be able to watch football and talk about football for a living.
Absolutely. That's the dream for us all as far as I'm concerned. But with all that being said, before you get out of here, is there any other projects you got going on the side? Anybody want to shout out? Anything like that?
Oh, I mean, just shout out you guys, right? Like shout out the grind and remember I think I might have messaged you this, Sam, like you'll be amazed what you can get if you just ask. You just ask, like and it doesn't mean everybody's going to say yes, and it doesn't mean everybody in this business or whatever business you're in is nice or the greatest person ever, but you should have no fear in what you do and what you pursue. And you should always know and approach things with an open mind of like, I'm just going to ask. I'm going to ask for that interview with Peyton Manning. And if he says no, well, I'm not interviewing him right now. So if I ask and he says no, that doesn't change what I'm doing. I'm not interviewing Peyton Manning. That was my idea when I got into radio. Like I'm not, and it's funny that it was Peyton, but that was my example. Like, I'm not talking to Peyton tomorrow. So if I ask and I'm not talking to Peyton, what does it change? Nothing. So ask, because you might just talk to him. So ask. You might just get on the radio. You might never get off the radio. Like, just ask. And then do the work, be respectful, be kind. I see a lot of young people and even some older people, and those older people I've talked to about their Twitter presence. Like, you can't be a jerk on social media. And it doesn't mean that debate's not part of it. Like, be healthy with your debate, be able to back up with reasoning, know that you're not going to be right about every prospect. When people are like, you shut up about Tariq Woolen, like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm right about every prospect. I miss on my prospects. And when I miss, I want to learn more. Why did I miss? What did I not see? Why did this player not work out? When Tariq Woolen hits and everyone's like, oh, he's great, just like you said. And I go, yeah, whatever. I didn't learn anything. Tariq Woolen's great. I knew that a year ago. Wish George Payton would have known that. But it's my misses. When I miss, I dig in. Why did I do that? What did I not see? What's going on? Did I get bad information? Did I have bad eyes? Like, I want to know more. And the misses are fascinating. I don't want to miss, but the misses to me are fascinating. And again, it comes back to fit. So, like, go forward with humility and remember that it's glory to the players and glory to the game. This isn't about you. This isn't about I'm making a big name or your brand or whatever. If you are good, one of my real good friends is Emery Hunt. And if people don't know Emery Hunt, you better know Emery Hunt. Why? Because him and Teron Davenport, and Teron's on ESPN now. covering the Titans. Emery's on CBS covering everything, covering NFL draft. Teron Davenport and Emery Hunt started on Football Game Plan, which still exists, on YouTube 15 years ago. Okay. And so 2 YouTube guys were all about the work, and Emery's one of the smartest football guys I know. Emery's now on CBS. Teron is now on ESPN. From YouTube, from 100 viewers and 100 subscribers or whatever to those destinations. So it can happen for you. You just got to do it. Know it's about the work. It's not about you. And just be kind and be respectful and be good. Emery Hunt is great. Teron Davenport is great. Why? Because they do the work and they're smart about football.
Absolutely. Emery Hunt covers XFL, CFL,
Yeah,
NFL, everything.
Emery
So
does
yeah,
it all, man. He does it all.
exactly.
One of the best men that I know. Like, just I saw him in Vegas. We got to catch up once a year. And he's always asking about my kids, and like he just remembers everything, he knows everything. He's like one of the greatest dudes of all time.
Absolutely. So one real quick question. This should be a quick one. We share another thing that I haven't spoken about. I'm a huge metalhead, so I'm curious, what
Yes.
is your favorite band of all time?
My favorite band of all time, and they're kind of metal, and their last album was death metal because it was their first album, Raging Wrath of the Easter Bunny. But Mr. Bungle is, and now it's got Dave Lombardo on drums now for Mr. Bungle, and Scott Ian is playing guitar now for Mr. Bungle. Scott Ian with Anthrax and Lombardo with Slayer, and Mike Patton, of course, the lead singer of Mr. Bungle. It was his high school band. And of course he went on to be the lead singer of Faith No More. Everybody knows him for Epic and stuff, but Mr. Bungle is actually my favorite band. My probably close second is probably Testament. I like Bay Area thrash metal, so Testament, Death Angel, that type of metal. Obviously Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer, that type of stuff. That's really good too. But I love Testament. I love Mr. Bungle. And I love thrash metal. Basically, I love all sorts of music, and I've been on a Head Planet Earth kick, Head PE kick, like for a while now. But that's pretty much what I listen to now, and keep listening to. So shout out Head PE.
Very nice. Very nice. Love that. Had to sneak that in there at the end. But with everything we just covered, I really appreciate all your time. It took over a little over an hour and a half of your time. Really appreciate it. Once again, just thank you so much for being here. Can't tell you how much we appreciate it once again.
Yeah, look forward to the next time. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, and we also look forward to the next time.
Yeah, man.
You think you got your life.
my advice to everyone is like, what do you want to do? Huh? Go do it. How many times do I talk to people? Hey, I want to do what you do. And I say, start a podcast. And then I'll see them a year later. Did you start your podcast? No. I'm like, well, then you're not going to do it. Like, go do it. StreamYard's got real good service. Like, yes, EV whatever service you use, like, you want to do this, go do it. There's nothing stopping you. Only you're stopping you. And that's the key in life. All of us, the only thing stopping us is ourselves and the limit in our imaginations. Like, no, imagine it all. Dream it all.